Some cat hair on the microphone. That'll have to do. There we go. Ah, hello. My goodness, it's a little warm today, and I chose to wear a hat. Well then, let's see what we got. My notebook, just in case, and Vivian's diary. This is the second one that I have that we'll be reading. Exciting. This is kind of a vacation book for her. I believe, yes, Easter Vacation, 1928. Boy, it's been a while since we've read from Vivian. Her first diary we got through in January, I believe, when I was away. So it's about time. I've started reading the third and fourth one because she does this thing where she kind of, a fly, great, get out of here, where she'll keep a regular journal and then she'll have a vacation journal. So I thought, well, I should read things in order and make more sense. So just skip back and forth between two of them. This one has a bunch of letters and notes in it that I will produce as necessary. Some of them are in German, so we are working on translating those, and I will read our translation when it comes time. They're letters from men she met on her vacation. So let's see, what do we have to say before I get started? First of all, dress from La Vie de Light. I am working on one of my own. It's also a shade of pink. Hopefully I'll have that done for not the next reading, because I'll sit and do that today, but the next set of readings, I hope. And it's gonna match a hat I have that like matches nothing I own. So that's exciting. Oh, I got new shoes. I got more than one pair. Let's see if I can show them to you. I'm wearing it. Just to complete the outfit, I decided to wear them. I still have the sticker on the bottom, but aren't they cute? They're by Memory Shoes. They just had a sale, so I couldn't resist. And I bought 3 pairs. These are 1920s. I got a pair that's more close to 1930s, and then a pair that's more 1940s. They are brown. I just got them today. I haven't tried them on. Also, before I start, it looks like this diary has a lot of votes. So does the one for the girl in London during the war. I think that one's winning, but this is the second one. It's a woman in San Diego living with her sister in 1956. I've read it and I cannot figure out her name or how old she is or anything yet. Her sister's birthday is in there. I have that. So I have like, her sister's name is Anne. Anyway, mystery woman. However, I need a little help because she uses some shorthand, and I need to figure that out. I'm trying to find an example for you in here. Yeah, but every so often she's got some shorthand in here, I believe. And of course, when I look for it, I can't find it. But if anyone knows, there's some. I don't know if you'd be able to see that at all. But I might need some help with this. I might need some help. It looks like an alien language to me. So in order to decipher that, I don't think it's anything crazy. There's a little bit more up there. I don't know if you can see. I figured out, I think, that one symbol means check, like a check in the mail. But, geez, okay, I could use some help with that if anyone knows anything about shorthand. I will be scanning that soon. That would be helpful, all right? But if you think you can help with the shorthand, I appreciate it. Also, I'm working on transcribing the next one of Eliza's diaries, 1877. It goes a bit slow, and if anyone's interested in helping me with those, I mean, I scan them kind of as I go, but if I can get any help, that'd be great. It just takes me a little while, and it's I've got a lot of them, and we want to keep up with the readings. But I guess that's about it. I've talked about my wardrobe. I've talked about the diaries. I've talked about the weather, and we should get started with Vivian. I'm going to take a sip of tea and prepare myself, because you know what we do with Vivian? We try it in an English accent. Probably wouldn't fool any English people, but I just find it fun. I really like Vivian, and I don't know, want to read it more in her voice as best I can. So, all right, one moment. Move that there, because that's so cute. Got that in Pennsylvania. I love these things. Fix it someday. I like the glass ones, the little glass ones. It's so pretty. Don't have any. All right, okay, here we go. And excuse me if I have to stop once in a while. I'm getting over a cold and just kind of randomly have to cough. So that will probably happen. Okay, here we go. Might take a minute to get into. Might sound a bit like Audrey Hepburn. That seems to happen sometimes. But I shall try to think about the Queen while I'm talking. Here we go. Okay. The Easter vacation, 1928. This time I really did look forward to coming down from UC with a thrill. Indeed, all the others envied me. That is, all the people at UC that I am on intimate terms with. But the funny part is that Alderton is coming to Vienna, and he has promised to give me a look-in. I had an awful rush to get everything ready in time, and on Thursday afternoon I really had a headache after running down the avenue 3 times. At 4:30 an express letter came. An express letter from Jerry arrived with a long list of things he wanted, but too late. I said goodbye to Mummy at West Ealing, and Daddy came along to Liverpool Street to register my luggage. On the platform, Mr. John Dorf was waiting to see me off. He had brought along some chocolates. We chatted very gaily until the half hour, then I steamed out. There were only 2 ladies in my compartment, a girl of 20 and her mother. They were awfully nice and chatty. I really could not tell when we passed Colchester, but I was thinking of Forsdyke and wished I had thought of telling him. At Parkston I got an obliging porter who said he would know me by my flower, I think. After showing up my passport, I found my cabin, tipped the porter, and then slipped up something on deck. I exchanged a few words with an old sea salt and then turned in. I had the cabin to myself, quite a luxury. The ship moved very quietly till about 2:15 in the morning, and then we began to perform very complicated gyrations, which it was impossible to describe. I didn't know whether it was up and down and round about, all at the same time. At 5:15 I was up on deck in a slight drizzle and was among the first 10 people to land. I got a corner seat in a carriage, but then 2 ladies also got in. I went straight along to the dining car, selected a tiny table for 2, and ordered my coffee. Soon other people dribbled in, and the gent came in and made straight for the seat opposite. I did not talk to him, but he was highly amused when I upset my coffee as the train jumped some points and gave a violent jerk. Back in my compartment there were 3 gentlemen who took no notice of me, so I leaned back in my corner and shut my eyes, as I knew the whizzing landscape would make me feel giddy afterwards. After passing the German frontier at Emmerich, the official came into our carriage. The gents had unlocked their bags, so I did the same, and he only asked, excuse my pronunciation, "Hat die Dame was zu verstohlen?" Asking if there was anything to declare. And then I shut my bag. He sent me into the luggage van for the examination of my trunk. The van was nearly empty, and the official asked if I had anything to declare, so I pulled out my little blue cigarette case and said, "Hier sind meine Zigaretten." It's my cigarettes. Of course, he just laughed and told me to lock my trunk. It was terribly hot in the carriage, and I longed to be able to clean up my face. At Dusseldorf, place names are a bit hard. I was left alone in the carriage, and they said I would not arrive at Dusseldorf till 12:45. So in a very leisurely way, I tidied up in preparation for anyone meeting me at Dusseldorf. Just as I had finished cold creaming my face, the train slowed down at about 12:20, and then I saw to my horror that I was already in Dusseldorf. I slammed down my case without locking it, jammed on my hat, and rushed out. There was nobody to meet me, so feeling disappointed, I found the train for E and bagged a corner seat. Soon a Jewish-looking, dark-haired man made a beeline for my compartment, and having put my case up on the rack, he seated himself opposite and began a conversation. I soon got sick of him and his insinuations, so I began reading in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. But this did not deter him, as it would have done an Englishman. On the contrary, he began to argue about the title of the book, and said that many preferred black-haired girls, and so on, finally adding something about my eyes. So I shut up altogether. I read on to the end of my book, and then frantically pretended to be still engrossed in it, till we drew into E. To my relief, Uncle Julius was waiting for me. Poor Auntie was feeling indisposed, and she had bad toothache. The children were so glad to see me, and I met Kate, sorry, pronunciation of names, comes down at the door. And I met Kate, comes down at the door. Sorry. Maybe that's her last name. Kate Gomez? Lizzie looked very ill. After lunch, Wassertrudingus phoned and wanted to know when they could see me. There was a beautiful bunch of white lilac waiting for me, with a card from Herr Wolf to greet me. He too phoned and arranged to come over at about 7. By my special request, we had tea in the basket chairs in the lounge, with the gaily painted parrot on the wall. At 7 punctually, the gentleman came for me, so I swallowed some sandwiches in haste, slipped into my turquoise frock, and went off with him to a concert by pupils of a singing class. He was in full evening dress. Everyone there greeted him, for he seemed to be well known. Also, lots of them stared at me, as there were mostly typically fair people there. We were in the second row. A boy sat in the first row who knew Mr. W. and kept turning round to stare at us. He evidently wanted to be introduced, and plucked up courage in the interval. Had to have a little coffee break there. And apologies for all my German pronunciation. I don't know German, and I didn't try very hard with the pronunciation, figuring out pronunciation of these. I am just kind of doing my best, winging it with whatever Dutch I know and whatever I can make out here. But it's a bit difficult for me, the German. So sorry. I know Vivian's just fluent. I am not. Désolé. Mr. W had to put on a receiving set. He introduced me to several people in the interval, and somebody gave me a cigarette. When the concert was over, I dashed back to the house for my evening shoes, and then we went on to the Regenbogen Cabaret, where Kate joined us. She is very fair and looked charming in a black dress. We could not get a front table, but had a good view. Mr. W ordered champagne and tons of eats, but I only partook of the champagne. There was an orchestra playing and a something talking a lot of nonsense. In spite of my journey, I was not tired, only I began to feel giddy, so I had to look down. Then a couple gave an exhibition dance. He was all right, but I didn't like her. Then general dancing. After some time, a dark gent came to fetch Kay. He asked her if her friend also danced, and she said I could do so for far better than she could. Then more entertainment. Then a gent asked me, after bowing to Herr W. We had quite a good dance, and he was interested to hear I was English. Then our good old friend went over and asked two ancient companions of his. Of course, I hate that sort of thing, and as soon as the band struck up, he kept on waving to them. I was introduced to one of them, and we did a light foxtrot to a tango. Next, two people walked up to ask Kay. They did not notice each other at first, but one shoved his oar in first, and the other apologized and asked me. It was the professional. I said I was not used to German dancing yet, for they still do old Charlestons, but he said with a laugh that he had been to England 2 months ago and did not find a difference. Finally, Kay sat out, and just as I had struck one of the pink carnations Mr. W had bought us in my hair, for I was feeling quite steady now and very gay, a fair young man walked over and bowed. I turned to Mr. W, and then he remembered to ask. My partner skidded slightly and murmured something quite innocently. Murmured something about the slippery floor. I disagreed and said quite innocently that I had danced on more dangerous ground before. But the wretch chose to take that the wrong way, and so he thought he'd have some fun. He said, Lassen Sie mich mal, what on earth is that? Ihr schon Augen blicken, Sie klein Engländerin. Ouch, I butchered that, and then I butchered the word butchered. Great. Let me see your beautiful eyes, little English lady, is what that was supposed to be. But which she translates. Let me see your beautiful eyes, little English lady. Thank you for translating that. I laughed and looked up very quickly at his blue eyes, and then just as quickly down again. He was not satisfied and begged for another chance, but remembering Phil's party, I said, one could only take medicine in small doses at first. He did not think of the dancing. Indeed, part of the time, he almost marked time while he endeavored to put some question that would catch me out and make me look up at him. But I was too clever. When the music stopped, he would have gone on dancing, but I stopped the fool, and he said what a pity it was. I said the obvious remedy was to ask me again, but Mr. W took me into the bar. and subsequent events have made me thankful he did so. We had an alcoholic orangeade and then took the taxi to Mr. W's flat. It was 12:30, and I thought how strange it seemed. He took us in and showed me my photo framed in gold. Then he suddenly felt ill, so we bade him goodbye, and he kissed us both repeatedly, dear old soul, and we bundled home in the taxi. So it had been a very long day, for it was 1:15 when we got in. Ye gods and little fishes! Saturday, the 24th. Oh, what month was this? The 24th of... We don't know. Okay. I was up by 8:30, and the whole morning was spent in shopping. Of course, as usual, the phone was ringing all day for barmen. After lunch, more shopping. As I sat in a shoe shop, trying on new evening shoes, a young man came down the stairs, and I recognized him in a flash as the flirting partner of the previous evening. I went as red as a beetroot and told Auntie, who was absolutely shocked. He had the grace, after looking over once, as she told me, to give no sign, but merely to go on fitting shoes. Also, I believe one of the shop walkers danced with me the previous evening. I also saw another girl who had been there, and when I called again later, Joe Matschik, the exhibition dancer, was there and greeted me politely. Apologies, I am stopping quite frequently today. Oh, I'm sorry, my goodness. Okay, back to Vivian. Then we met Uncle and Elma for coffee at the Café Wolfing. Quite a lot of people stared. I was wearing my new hat, a la Duchess of York, and a pink silk jumper. Elma accompanied me to... Actually, this isn't a jumper, but it's slightly pink. And the hat I made. Elma accompanied me to Tietz to get this book. And then I had to rush home to change in an awful hurry, since Mr. Wolf was waiting. Everything seemed to be in a hurry. I put on my sparkling evening jumper, and Uncle's eyes signaled his approval across the supper table. Then Auntie and I walked on one on each side of the old gentleman to the Thalia Theatre, where we had reserved seats in the 6th row for an excellent something in Fluch und die Welt, which I did not translate. We don't know. Maybe someone else does. I thoroughly enjoyed it. In the interval, we went upstairs and drank fizz, and people stared. After the show, it was really too late to phone Uncle, but Mr. W. pleaded with us till we accompanied him to the Café Hollander. There I had pineapple and whipped cream, and coldly avoided the evident curious and admiring glances of some men. I know that I looked striking in that jumper, and also one so rarely saw really dark women there. They all have golden hair done up in coils, well behind the ears, which they leave exposed. Finally, we said goodbye to the old man, and I kissed him, and then we trotted home. Tuesday, the 27th of an unknown month. Well, I have left Elberfeld, and as I did not have the time to write there, I will just quickly add how I spent the last 2 days there. On Sunday afternoon, Elmer, Lizzie, and I all went to the station, the station together. It was crowded, so we had to go into the little zoo cafe. Really, I was supposed to go to Tudinger's, right? No clue. Oh, that's a name. That's someone's last name. As I intended leaving for Nassau next day. But that morning, on waking, I had found that I couldn't utter a word. My voice could not raise more than a whisper or a painful wheezy sound. So of course I said I couldn't and wouldn't go to Barmen alone, to sit there and be quizzed. Lizzie is ill, and so on our return, my voice having recovered a little, I tried to help Auntie in persuading the silly, snivelling girl to return home early. Of course, she was afraid of the other girl, Clara, who was as mad as a wild animal when Auntie told her next morning. Sunday evening, we went to the Kaiserhof for supper, and Auntie and Uncle gave me some good criticism and advice, which I gladly accepted. Mr. W. happened to drop in, and he joined us. At last it was decided that since Auntie's toothache was so bad and she could not come to Nassau with me, it was really absurd for me to go there alone, for various reasons. I was very relieved, so I had an extra day in Elberfeld. I spent the morning repacking, for I had, after all, worn nearly all my dresses. Soon Mr. W. called in a great hurry. Kate and I took him into the study, and then he pulled a tiny packet out for me. It was a beautiful little silver powder compact with something already in it. I kissed him on both cheeks, and he departed. Auntie came back with my evening shoes, a present from Uncle, and a black suede and silk evening bag from herself. That afternoon I couldn't wriggle out of the invitations to Barmen, so I took Elmer with me. He could keep up a conversation with the devil. And we drove, or flew, in the Schwebebahn to Barmen. Oh gosh, this name. I can't even make it out. His ladies received me, and I was thoroughly quizzed through Aunt Betty's glasses, and she said I had grown very fat in my face, but I was much prettier. I didn't want to sit in their stuffy cabin, so I suggested the outing to the something. They said they were going to walk, so I thought it would be 10 minutes off, I think. We stayed uphill, Elmer leading the day, and soon Betty was puffing and blowing and complaining of the heat. It was quite fresh, and said she had a fur-lined coat, swank. Imagine my horror when we went on and on to learn that it was a good half-hour's walk uphill, when there was a funicular to take you up for a few pfennig. Also don't know my currency. This is rough, the German, and sorry. We didn't talk much. They asked questions, and I answered in monosyllables. We had a dull tea up there, with very little music, and I smoked. I said I'd like to take the railway down, but they brought so many excuses that we walked down to the Schwebebahn. Goodbye, no regrets. This morning the whole family, except Uncle and Elmer, who had gone to school cheerfully with the hope of seeing me in 3 weeks' time at home, were at the station to see me off, and so was Mr. W. Auntie gave me last-minute instructions how to behave myself en route, and after a very dull and tiring journey with nobody to talk to, here I am sitting in bed in the Grand Hotel, Nuremberg. I had supper at 9:15 in the big restaurant, at a little table for myself with 3 people waiting on me. I wrote a postcard to Auntie and sent a picture of the bratwurst glockel to Daddy. Then I had some job over the phone, but succeeded in getting through to Mrs. Dusseldorf, who is delighted and is coming to see me tomorrow. Sorry. Then I had some job over the phone, but succeeded in getting through to Mrs. Dusseldorf, who was delighted and is coming to see me tomorrow. So I will shut up now, as I'm really dead tired. My room is lovely, with big light, one over the tiled washing alcove and one by my bedside. Also telephone, hot and cold water, and radiators galore. Wednesday the 28th. This morning on waking, I felt very relieved to think that Mrs. Dusseldorf was coming to see me. I went down to Brecker and gave instructions that I was expecting a visitor. Unfortunately, my voice was still so husky that I couldn't sound imperative and official. You can't give commands when you are very squeaking and going as red as a poppy. I had just started breakfast when I saw Mrs. J. ushered in. She did not recognize me at first, though I waved to her. She sat by me while I breakfasted and poured out all her woes since her mother is very ill. Then I took her up to my room, and after pulling in the box of Nuremberg something or other she had brought for me, we sent down, and then it just stops. Vienna. This is the first chance I have of writing since I am here, but I really must say something at last. People are all very nice to me, and I do hear compliments, but they don't sweep away all my inferiority complex, as Ma suggested in her letter. I am also having talks with Mr. Eichhorn. At least I have only had one so far, but there are more to come. I am a very busy young lady. 4 or 5 appointments in one day. In the morning I go for my medical treatment for the hands at the Dianabad Diathermancy department, and then I do some shopping. The afternoon also has treatment on the list from Dr. Fassler, or a talk with Mr. A, or Liev and Riesel Kraus come over, or maybe they ask us for tea. Or, of course, I have to meet Jerry. Often I lunch with Uncle and Jerry at Falco. Then in the evenings I go to parties or theatres. The first party I went to at some place was deadly boring. I really had a relatively good time. For Ernst, somebody who was leaving for England the next week, came and had a mild flirtation frequently during the evening, but also a very meek fish named Lemberg, and frightfully ugly, took a fancy to me from the first moment, and he stuck to me the whole evening. Although he bored me to tears, I asked him for our next party, as I had been given carte blanche to pick up any males. There was a lot of fuss and preparation for our party, but it was worth it. Gerda and her mother quarrelled a lot about the arrangements of the supper tables. There were to be about 24 guests. Finally, it was arranged that in the little study there should be the nicest table of all. I was to be placed there with only Gerda and the bright Leave and 4 gents. My partner was to be one Baumgarten, too young to interest Gerda. Our opinions are very different as to the interesting age, and who would suit me very well, they promised. Lemberg was put in the big room in a position where he could not see me. This time I quite forgot that my flame dress has been fatal on so many occasions, and indeed it was a happy evening for me, and the forerunner of better things still, I hope. Gerda wore her yellow dress, and we were neither of us quite ready when the first gent arrived. We 2 girls sat on the sofa, and each succeeding gent joined the semicircle of chairs facing us. Handsome Dr. Weissel soon arrived and seemed quite at ease, unlike the people at somebody else's. Then someone else came, and then the door was opened to admit a very young chap, not in evening dress, but neatly dressed and with a good-humoured face. Mr. Baumgarten bowed low over my hand and touched it lightly with his lips. He smiled pleasantly at me, his face lit up by blue eyes and very even teeth showing when he smiled, beneath an upper lip on which there grew a small, rather fair moustache. He made himself at home, and after staring at me some time while Lemberg and Albert E. were announced, he plucked up courage and started a conversation. There was a most attractive, boyish and eager air about him. Albert began to flirt wickedly, proud of his few words of English. I sat Liesel next to him. When she came and edged further along the sofa, Hans Baumgarten had also taken a seat nearer. Not sure. Something to ignore Albert and talk to Hans only, who was very shy about his English. More people poured in, among them Uncle Alf and Mr. Grant, I don't know, we'll say Mr. G. Uncle was formally introduced to me and pretended we had never met before, while Mrs. H. told everybody, do I have that? Unser lieber englischer Gast, which don't know what that means. Also, I could see Uncle and Grandpart discussing me together, and Mrs. H. announced to the company at large that what an excellent impression I had made on the difficult-to-please grandmother. I felt terribly embarrassed and blushed deeply. Also, Uncle sat in a direct line behind Hans, and as I talked cheerfully with the latter, I could just see Uncle's eye boring into me, and the boy watching. Naturally, that confused me, and I had to look under the table and anywhere but in Hans' direction. Soon I arose and turned the gramophone on, and as I stood in the doorway between the two rooms, Albert rose and would have had the first dance, but I had been forewarned, not without reason, and so I snubbed him so very severely that he hopped it. I had about 3 men talking to me, and so you can imagine that the conversation was lively. Soon, Kitaj asked me to dance, and after that my partners followed in rapid succession. Hans took me on for a fast tango, and of course that was a foolish start, but gradually it got into his step, for he was a very light dancer and tall but thin. He quite liked it, for he repeated the second. Each time I danced, I did an exhibition, for the other girls did not seem to dance. Only the men stood round and watched and waited their turn. I danced with Albert, Hans, Uncle, Grandbart, Kitaj, and Weissel, as far as I remember. Silly Lemberg was quite out of it, for he only came up at intervals to talk about some frightfully serious subject. After supper he played bridge unhappily and badly, while I was beginning to have a good time with Hans and had an awful job with Albert. Then a few of us sat down with only the small bed lamp on. We danced in our bedroom, which had been cleared of furniture, and Sure, I don't know, who is Lev's special and is expected to marry her someday, showed us coin tricks, and Hans tried some funny trick in which he had to take my hand. Things began to get a little dull, and Hans suggested that he ought to go, as he lives 1.5 hours away. It was now past 1, but he suddenly forgot all this when Schur suggested a walk. I delightfully applauded the suggestion, which was further developed, until finally, after much pleading on my part and help on Gerda's, shortly after, Uncle and is it Gronbart or Grobart? I'm not sure. Had left. 2 more couples left. Mrs. H. pleaded with Schur to be careful in driving his car, and Hans promised to take care of me. I was well wrapped up in woolly jacket and coat, and then Lev and Schur, Hans and I left. The boy took us on each arm, and then we climbed into Schur's little open 4-seater. At first, Lev, I'm not sure with these German names. It's the same name that shows up in Eliza's diary. I really should look up how to pronounce this. It's Lev or Leave. Leve. Sat beside me, but I objected violently, and so did Hans. Therefore we changed, and Hans squashed in beside me, and Leave. I will look it up. Sat beside Schur in front, and I promised not to turn round. As the car was open, I felt cold and admitted the fact to my companion when he asked. My hair stood up on end, and first my hands got very cold, as I had no gloves. He took off one of his, but I refused the other, and instead put my near hand into his pocket, where it was kept warm by his hand. But soon he said, after squeezing it, that there was only room for one hand, and removed his. As we swept through the empty streets and up the winding, sloping, zigzag road to the top of the Kobenzl hill, I soon found out what he had done with his hand, for his arm was behind my shoulders, and when the car swayed round the bends, his grasp gradually tightened. We sat very close. At the top we had a splendid view of all the lights of Vienna, twinkling far below, though there were no moon and stars. Liv and I danced about together till the men joined us. We walked about on the castle terrace, and then Liv and Schur disappeared in one direction, and Hans linked his arm in mine and walked me off the other way. He took my little evening bag in his pocket, but when I afterwards demanded my hanky, he stuffed it first. I explained that I had only put the scent on me, so he immediately bent over my hair and reeled off a list of names of French and English scent fumes? No. Something. I asked him where he got his knowledge from, but he wouldn't say. Then afterwards he gave me back my bag after holding it in a precarious upside-down position. To my horror, I couldn't find the silver powder case from Mr. Wolf, and he swore he hadn't got it, so I looked in the dark for it, in the damp grass. Then the wretch suddenly drew it from his pocket. I was so cross. He kept my visiting card with my London address and my lace hanky from Phil, and refused to part with them that evening. Angrily, pretense, I refused absolutely to let him put his arm through mine, so he put it round my shoulders, as I wanted, and marched me back to the car. All the way down he kept ruffling up my hair, just as Gerda does, humming all the while this wonderful hair, although he tried to pull my head down on to his shoulder about 5 times, but always I laughed and struggled free. I really forgot he was Austrian, for his English was now very fluent and excellent. Since he played with my hair, I said one ought to charge amusement tax. He asked how much I charged, and I innocently said, I don't know or care. But he kept on asking, so I said that Austrian money was different. Oh no, you know that Austrian and English are the same in this case, he cried, and I knew it was no good feigning ignorance. At last I refused to kiss him. He pulled me over and caught me with a kiss on the forehead. I asked if he were satisfied, and he said he wouldn't be till I kissed him. I absolutely refused, and said that it was too late now, as we were only half a minute from our house. But even as the car swung into our road, he caught me up, and despite my struggles, he planted his lips firmly right on mine. We both laughed very much, and I don't really think the two in front knew what had happened. In the hall he pulled out my hanky again and said it was the prettiest he had seen. Gerda invited him for the party on the following Thursday, and as it was now past 2, and he had to be at his office at 8, the whole family argued with him till he agreed to sleep on the sofa. Gerda and I sat in our dressing gowns in the drawing room with him long after the rest of the house was sleeping, and we spoke in whispers. I showed him my scent and left the bottle on the table while I went into the next room to fetch something. When I came back, he sat there sniffing deeply at the bottle and explained that he wanted to impress the scent on his memory forever. At last we said good night, and while Gerda retired, he just kissed my hand, and then I withdrew too. Next morning he was gone before we awoke. I looked in vain in the piano and under my shawl for some note. But later in the morning he phoned, and when I took the receiver he asked what I had dreamt, etc. Also he sounded as if he wanted to meet me before the next week. Later, when his mother phoned to thank us, she said how he had been so charmed with me and invited us all, including me, over for lunch on Easter Sunday. Today, Saturday, and Easter postcard was delivered for me immediately before I had seen it. I knew it would be from Hans, although I dared not something my hope. But the address was typewritten, and the card was really only a publisher's card, and the wrong district of Vienna had been written on it. So I knew it couldn't be Jerry, and Uncle would also have put his name. Gerda asked her father what job Hans was engaged on, and he said it was a publishers and booksellers. So we knew. The advertisement was for a series of children's books. Zuckenste für unsere Kleinen. One moment here. I think it was perfectly sweet of him and very tactfully done. Now, I have that postcard. Why am I still speaking in this English? She kept the postcard. I'll put it over here. This is the front of it, and then the back of it with her name. So pretty crazy. This is almost 100 years old. I mean, it's all almost 100 years old. But yeah, she kept it in her diary. Pretty cute. Yes, das Entzückendste für unsere Kleinen. I don't know what it means. Translation. So, yeah, there's that. One of our little goodies that she left us. And I think we're gonna say goodbye for today. I have to pause this for a minute because it's gonna run out of time. Sorry, the camera likes to quit on me after 20 minutes. It's been 20 minutes. 20 minutes straight this time. I have stopped and started a couple times, and I don't know how long we've been going. But it feels like a while, and my throat needs a rest before I change and do the next video. So we're just going to end that one here. As always, let's try to get through this sentence without something in my throat and finish the video. As always, if you're new to my channel, what I do is I post the first reading here publicly on YouTube, and then the rest of them go over on my Buy Me a Coffee page, where it's a monthly subscription. Right now it's $5 a month. I am posting a reading every Saturday, and I will post the rest of the readings as we go over there, and it goes the same for all the other diary readings I have listed on my YouTube. If you look at them and there's one you want to continue reading, I have them all on the Buy Me a Coffee site, and that link is down below. I also have complete scans of each diary. I post it right before I start reading them, so in case you want to read along, I sell them as well for $5 each. All right, I got through a sentence or two. But yeah, so the scans are $5 each, unless they're like really short diaries, then it's like $2. But it takes like a full day to scan one of these. So they are for sale over there if you want to support my mission of finding diaries and researching them and getting them back to their families. I've had 3 success stories so far. I want to hold on to Vivian's though, but she didn't have kids, so it is a little more difficult to look for family. They're not going to be direct family, but we shall see. But that's the mission. I'm gathering up diaries and sharing their stories and preserving them as best I can by scanning them, digitizing them. It's just me doing this. I do my best. I'm not like a professional, I don't know what you would call it, conservation expert. So yeah, I'm doing my best and trying to get them back to their families, which so far they've really appreciated. And I keep in touch with the 3 families that I've returned them to so far. But we've got a zillion more to go. So that is why I have the membership thing and sell copies of it. I also put a couple of them on Etsy, and I'll get them up there more. It's all just to kind of cover the cost of buying the diaries, because they get pretty expensive now, and also hopefully to return them without having to ask for any reimbursement, because yeah, especially for the more expensive ones, I'd prefer, when reaching out to the family, to say, I mean, which I have so far, like, this is how much it cost me. It's covered because I'm doing these readings, you know, I've covered the cost of that. So if you want to give me anything, you can. If not, it's fine. I will return it either way. So that's basically how I do it. Yeah, I gotta keep going, keep earning a little bit of money to cover them. Vivian's especially, like, her whole collection was pretty expensive, but I had to keep them together because I love her. Anyway, that's that. If you're interested in continuing on with Vivian here, just hop on over to the Buy Me a Coffee and join, and every week there will be another video until we finish it. Okay, so that's it. Look at that, I got through again without like choking. I'm going to take a little break, eat a little lunch, change into another dress, and do another reading today while we're all set up here. All right, hopefully I will see you over in the Secret Diary Club on Buy Me a Coffee soon. But thanks for stopping by either way. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you around. Bye.